Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Now to Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott, who joins us from Naples this morning. Senator, welcome to Face the Nation. You got your work cut out for you. President Trump said you are one of the senators in charge of coming up with a Republican alternative to Obamacare. When are we going to see your proposal?
Well, first off, I'm glad that the president cares about health care. I ran the largest hospital company. I care about the cost of health care, and that's what I focused on. I know it's going to be tough. I look forward to, to seeing what the president's going to put out. With Nancy Pelosi in the House, it's going to be tough to get something done. But we do know that Medicare for all, which Senator Sanders is all in on, is going to just ruin our healthcare system.
So
it's going to ruin Medicare, and it's also going to ruin private insurance.
Did you just say that you expect the White House to come forward with the proposal first?
Well, I know. In the end, the White House is going to have their plan, and I know it's going to be difficult with Nancy Pelosi. But what I'm going to focus on is how do you drive down costs? The Democrats constantly focus on access. The problem is the cost of health care is too high in this country. That's why I put a bill out this week that requires transparency at the pharmacy, with the insurance companies, and says we're not going to allow pharmaceutical companies to charge us more than what they charge in Europe. Mm-hmm. I had the same issue when I ran a large hospital company, and I did the exact same thing. I said, I had hospitals in Europe. I said, I'm not paying more for drugs in Europe than I'm paying in the United States. It's not fair to Americans.
It sounds like you and Senator Sanders
I'm going to work hard to get that passed. Well, we don't agree on much, but I'm glad he cares about prescription drug prices. But the problem that Democrats have is everything they keep doing is raising the cost of health care. Premiums went up.
Senator, can you just put a button on this, though? Clearly, the White House is going to have to weigh in. And the White House acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, was on other television programs this morning saying that he can promise no one will be left without health care if Obamacare is struck down. But as you've just said, there is no plan yet. So how can you promise that, like a state like yours, where it has the most people reliant on Obamacare of any state, how can you promise them they won't be left hanging?
Well, first off, Margaret, my focus is on and how do you drive down the cost of health care. That's what's causing people health care issues. I've been talking to a lot of people in my state about insulin costs. Why in the world would they go up the way they have? Now, the other thing,
but that's a cost of a plan. What if they won't have a plan at all if Obamacare is struck down? Can you promise them that won't be the case?
Well, first off, I think it's very important that we make sure that people have a pre-existing condition can get a health care plan, get a health care plan that they can afford. And I want to work on that with other senators to make sure that happens. We talked about it at the Budget Committee last week, and everybody was supportive of that. I want to make sure individuals can stay on their parents' plans. But this idea of the government taking over health care and running all of health care has never worked. It's not going to work. We're going to ruin the entire system. Let's focus on the problem we have. The problem is not access. The problem is the cost of healthcare and the unbelievable inflation we've seen, especially, let's start with drug prices. Why are drug prices going up the way they have?
So you think this piece-by-piece approach is the best way to do it rather than a wholesale Republican alternative?
Look, I want to listen to everybody's ideas. I've sat down with the pharmaceutical companies, the PBMs, the insurance companies, the hospital industry, pharmacies, to ask them their ideas. I think the best way of doing this is to get everybody's ideas and see what we can do.
So that sounds like the piecemeal.
Instead of what the Democrats keep doing is access.
Can you
I want to
say,
focus on driving down costs.
I'm sure people will like things cheaper. They always do. In terms of what they'll actually be able to get, though, can you say that the Republican alternative will do things like guarantee access to maternity care or care for newborn children, mental health, some of the things that are guaranteed in Obamacare?
First off, it's very important to me that people get health care. I will only support something where people have access to health care, but it's got to be at a price they can afford.
But on those particular instances,
I watched my mom cry that she couldn't get health care for my brother.
On those particular things, though, would it provide maternity care?
Well, of course. I mean,
okay.
But Margaret, the president just put out a marker, what he wants to accomplish. I think all of us want to be helpful to try to get something done. We know it's going to be difficult with Nancy Pelosi and with the Democrats proposing Medicare for all. We know that. At the same time, what I'm going to do is what I believe we can get done. Let's focus first on prescription drug prices. They're way too high. We shouldn't be paying more than what they pay in Europe. It's unfair to Americans. And let's go piece by piece to try to fix it.
And don't expect a wholesale plan until after 2020?
You know, I'm going to continue to work on. I'm a business guy. The way I got my stuff done in business is every day I said, what could I get done today? Okay. And I know a lot of people like the grand bargains. I personally don't believe in grand bargains. I believe in piece by piece fixing things.
It is Monday, the 1st of April of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. There's no joke here today, folks. It's all real. We're not going to prank you in spite of the holiday devoted to pranking. So rest assured, what you hear today, at least in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is no distraction into, I don't know, juvenile, sophomoric humor. Let's not do it. Okay, so how was your weekend? Huh? It was a beautiful weekend here in Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America. We are right now experiencing rain, and we'll get more into that when we get into the weather, but April showers bring May flowers. And I have to say, some of those May flowers are popping right at the end of March, beginning of April. So, I don't know. Is it climate? I just don't know. Well, looks like Trump is on another tear. He would, the end of last week, Bob Mueller was a saint among saints, according to Donald Trump, because at that point, Donald Trump believed he was completely exonerated. The collusion delusion is over, and I have to tell you, the collusion delusion is fake news. Okay? That there's a delusion about the collusion? Yeah. But tell the big lie enough, people will believe it. And apparently about 29% do, which is always the most virulent part of not only Trump's base, but of the whole right wing. That 30%, 28%, has always been there. It's just that generally they were, how shall I put it, they were a bit suppressed. Meaning that by no action on our own, these people just wouldn't go to vote. Now they do. I propose that maybe we should put up some impediments to their voting. I don't know, maybe closing polling places within 30, 40, 50 miles of wherever a Trump supporter is. That's a lot of land, I got to tell you. And some of those Trump supporters are spread out. if you look at the map, you can tell. That's not only property that's being represented. That's like just a couple of MAGA hatters in Wyoming, and they're about 50, 60 miles apart. So it goes. So, make them, I don't know, have them guess how many gumballs are in a jar. That's been done before. Maybe we should give them civics questions. I know Trump wouldn't be able to pass. I mean, he's out today talking about the census. You know, like we're supposed to have a citizenship question on the census. I wanted to say he's also blaming the Democratic radical left liberals. And I actually have looked into this, not only, being a constitutional history, a student of constitutional history and European law, by the way. I looked into it, and as far as I can tell, the Founding Fathers were the ones who put the census into place, and there were no citizenship questions on it. And people will say, well, that's because everybody was an immigrant. So much for original intent then, huh? Yeah, it's original intent when they want it. Which reminds me, Mitch McConnell is out there talking about how the Democrats are the biggest obstruction to legislation and government in the history of the United States, and he says it with a straight face. I mean, when you say it, at least smirk like you're getting away with something. I mean, this guy is brazen. And those are the types I really want to go down hard. Really, Mitch. You will not be spared. You will not be spared. And speaking of not being spared, Donald Trump says he's holding Ginsburg's seat until she dies. He's keeping that open. He's not going to be appointing the person that he really wants to her seat until she dies. And I'm thinking, wow, I wonder what Ladbrokes puts as a wager on who goes first. Yeah, I'm putting my bet that RGB outlasts the orange toupee. I really do. I really do think it. Hey, what's on the rest of the menu? Of course, that was Rick Scott at the top, and I couldn't believe it. He's on Face the Nation and never got confronted every time he said, I was a leader of the largest medical company. And I don't know, is it just me? I would have said, you mean, wait a second, you didn't finish the sentence. You mean the largest medical company that you were CEO of? The largest medical company that was fined for the largest case of Medicare fraud in U.S. history? And I got to tell you, I looked a little bit more into it. It wasn't just U.S. history. Yeah, of all history. Of course, they don't have Medicare over in other parts of the world, but you know what I mean. So, he gets away with it. And he's supposed to be an expert on incrementalism. Well, he sure is about that. I'm not into a grand bargain. I want to try to incremental this thing to death so we can try to eke out as many dollars from these people. And then when they die, we got a whole other slew of people we can eke out money from them too. Well, on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. No April Fool's jokes here, folks. All right. A federal judge struck down a girls-only dress code as being unconstitutional. Yes, not an all-girls school, but the dress code was only for the girls. Trump officials are now jailing parents who just want to get their kids back because the level of cruelty by this administration knows no bounds. And Mussolini's granddaughter defended Trump in a fight with actor Jim Carrey over a Twitter post about fascism. Yeah, she maintains that if you keep calling my grandfather a fascist, that's going to move more people to the right. Oh, well, that's some defense. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the demise of the only U.S.-Russia arms control pact, you know, the one that's limiting nuclear weapons, the ones that can be deployed, well, that would give both countries the impetus to make more nukes. What else do you think those guys were talking about when the translator's notes were confiscated? Well, that and a few other things, I'm sure. And China is set to build 6 to 8 reactors a year to meet its 2030 goals. Except no one knows what those goals are, though, since they are a secret. What do you need all that nuclear waste to make plutonium for, huh? Huh? All that and more. On West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link at the rightish of the page. That is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and thank you, Kelly, for doing that. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, by the way, is the contribute button, and this is certainly no joke. We are, of course, as you might have surmised, in dire need of funds to be able to purchase some new equipment. Since this equipment is pretty darn old, you know, we are celebrating our 8th year of continuous broadcasting, 24/7, 365, and the machinery gets worn out over time. And it has indeed. And so we're saving our money to be able to do that. And you have been instrumental in that. So if you could become a recurring Patreon to Netroots Radio, that recurring contribution, even if it was like the cost of a espresso type coffee drink a month, if you could send that amount to Netroots Radio, we make those dollars stretch beyond the stretchable limits that can be gauged in the knowable universe. And we have a lot of practice at it, so thank you very much for your generosity. You can follow the show you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and we are forever grateful that he does. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then scramble to get the links on social media before showtime. But sometimes it's just right at showtime. Okay. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way from Think Progress by Sam Fullwood III. Now, I haven't seen photographs of Sam, and I have not seen Sam necessarily on any of the cable news shows, though maybe he's been on there. I didn't realize it. I know that Casey Michelle's been on a couple of times on MSNBC. But whenever I see like the third at the end of someone's name, I always figure they're wearing a bow tie. I might be wrong. Well, in a decision that strikes a progressive blow toward gender equality in public education, a federal judge ruled last week that North Carolina charter schools' requirement that female students wear skirts is unconstitutional. Well, good. U.S. District Judge Malcolm Howard in the Eastern District of North Carolina said that Charter Day School, a high-performance public charter in Leland, North Carolina, violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. Under the school's dress code, female students were required to wear skirts, skorts, or jumpers. I guess skirts are like skirts and shorts together. We used to call them culottes. Remember culottes? And they risked a disciplinary action up to expulsion for wearing pants or shorts. Of course, male students are allowed to wear pants or shorts. Well, of course we are. We're guys. Weird. In 2016, Parents of 3 male students, then ages 5, 10, and 14, attending the school, brought a lawsuit with representation from the North Carolina Cuisine, American Civil Liberties Union, arguing the dress code inhibited their daughters from learning on par with their male classmates. I gotta tell you, I've worn a skirt to school before, and it really does interfere with your learning. Specifically, the lawsuit pointed out no student had been expelled for violating the policy since the school opened in 2000. Administrators were unfairly treating girls by forcing them to wear clothing that restricted their ability to play freely at recess, sit without being overly concerned that they were flashing their undergarments, and being uncomfortably cold in winter weather. Well, that's what all girls had to go through. It's like history. It's a legacy. All I wanted was for my daughter and every other girl at school to have the option to wear pants so she could play outside, sit comfortably, and stay warm in the winter, Bonnie Peltier, the mother of a former charter day school student who was a client in the case, said in a statement released by the ACLU. We're happy the court agrees, but it's disappointing that it took a court order to force the school to accept the simple fact that in 2019, girls should have the choice to wear pants. Well, it sounds to me like this mom, what was it now? She could not play outside, sit comfortably, or stay warm in the winter, and she carried that her whole life until she had a kid. Charter schools receive funding from taxpayers, making them public schools. Although their charters allow flexibility to do things differently from traditional public schools, like having unaccredited teachers. For one. Charter Day School, for example, is one of 4 Wilmington, North Carolina area charter schools governed by a nonprofit group that hires a for-profit firm to coordinate its business and academic operations. I don't know. I think there should be a separation between the biz part of education and the education part of education, sort of like in journalism. There should be. There isn't, though. And look what's happened. Now, members of the school's nonprofit board, however, said its court filings that the dress code regulations were central to its educational mission. In addition to girls wearing skirts, the student union called for all students to wear white or navy blue tops, tucked into khaki or blue bottoms. The board said these rules were well established, and every parent knew about them when enrolling their children. Okay, so what you're trying to tell me is that really what you want is a bunch of automatons. Kids who are not being taught how to make up their own decisions about how they would appear, and really stifling critical thinking. On the other hand, I was always against the whole big consumerist thing, kids wearing, really fancy clothes to school and lording it over the other kids. I've got the brand name stuff. Your parents don't get you, and you're like, right? So to put a cap on this weird consumerism thing, uniforms are somewhat a mitigating factor in allaying that concern. But the byproduct of it is a bunch of regimented automatons, which is probably exactly what an authoritarian government wants. And Desai Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. It was bad enough the Trump administration has ripped migrant families apart and deported hundreds of parents while their children were still stuck in U.S. government custody. Well, they're not really stuck. They're just awaiting adoption at $45,000 a pop, run by Betsy DeVos's adoption company, by the way. Now, is that in this reporter's opinion? No, that's a fact, but it's not part of this article, just to be clear. Now, Trump officials are throwing many of those parents in jail for daring to return to try to see their stolen kids again, and a group of senators is demanding answers on the administration's new act of cruelty. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, a Democrat of Nevada, joined by Kamala Harris of California, Blumenthal of Connecticut, and Merkley of Oregon, asked Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen to explain why, after more than 24 parents came to the U.S. border on March 2nd, claiming asylum, most of them were tossed in jail and allowed to languish there for weeks without being allowed to reunite with their own children. These families have already suffered significant trauma at the hands of the U.S. government, the senators wrote in a letter. Given the grave risk to the health and well-being of these children and families, we urge you not to prolong their separation. The senators also demanded that these parents be released, reunited with their children, and allowed to continue their cases in immigration court. Of course, we all know that since the summer of 2017, the Trump administration has separated thousands of children from their parents in a draconian attempt to convince migrants and asylum seekers to stay away. There's a new sheriff in town, and we're called Gestapo Jim. After the family separation policy came to light, a federal judge forced the Trump administration to reunite all of the kidnapped children with their parents, but they can't really do that because they've adopted them out at about $45,000 a pop. Run by Betsy DeVos's adoption company, by the way. Let's not forget that. Well, earlier this month, 29 parents were tired of waiting for the administration and hoped they could see their children by presenting themselves to border agents and restating their claim for asylum. 17 of these parents are still being detained at a federal facility, unable to see their children. I just don't understand how it is that anybody who could be a parent doesn't have the genetic predisposition to, feel bad about ripping someone's kids away from them. They can't put themselves in the same shoes unless you're a pathological sociopath like somebody up there in the White House who can't stand brown and black people, and kids are usually in the way anyway. I mean, that's what he said on Howard Stern. Great Tom Boggiani, otherwise known as T-Bog, out of Raw Story, brings us this final offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy in a series of tweets yesterday morning, which would be Sunday. The granddaughter of Italian strongman Benito Mussolini lashed out at actor Jim Carrey over a Twitter post about fascism, which led to her later coming to the defense of Donald Trump. Well, of course. The comedian, who is also known for his blunt artwork, posted an illustration he made of Mussolini and his mistress Claretta hanging from their heels after he was deposed following World War II with the caption, "If you're wondering what fascism leads to, just ask Benito Mussolini and his mistress Claretta." Now, I should say that I've always been bothered by the abject brutality demonstrated by a human being upon another human body, even after death. And the public display of them was particularly gruesome, if you want to ask me. But fascists don't really like that picture at all, and I then think, well, maybe they should be made to feel uncomfortable about it. I've always felt as well that what separated us in our revolution and whatnot versus, say, the French Revolution is that there weren't the summary executions, which was rampant after the French Revolution, including killing many people who were stalwarts and leaders of that revolution for being, a little too royal for our tastes. And we had a more, I wouldn't say very peaceful transition, because we did have a war, of course. But the summary executions when the revolution was finalized was not seen here. But so this reprisal, the brutality reprisals, it's always bothered me, and I could do without seeing Benito and Claretta in that. Make it clear, very brutal photos. Now, Mussolini's granddaughter then took it upon herself to say, "Oh, you think we're so bad? Let's look at what America does." And, she showed pictures of, the genocide of the Native American and slavery, photographs, and in some cases just paintings and drawings of slaves and slaves being beat. And all of the transgressions that America's original sin is predicated upon. As a defense of, fascism isn't so bad compared to what you guys do. And then basically said Donald Trump embracing fascism is a good thing, just like they did back in the day when Grandpa was running the show. All right, let's get to our break. And when we come back from that break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Not So Spirited Awry. Warning, this Take Two contains major spoilers. Wonder Park is what I call a garden fence story. It starts in the normal, mundane world where our child protagonist, these days usually a girl, crawls through a hole in the garden fence, or enters a wardrobe in the attic, or gets swept up by a tornado, or accesses a hidden train platform, to be transported to a magical world in which she or he has adventures and then returns, changed and ready to face the mundane world. In Wonder Park, our heroine June heads to an amusement park that she unknowingly created with her mother out of her own imagination and then abandoned once her mother got sick. Now, a crucial aspect of the garden fence story is that through their adventures in the magical world, the kid learns what they need to take back to the regular world and solve the emotional crisis that they are experiencing there. Think of Miyazaki Hayau's brilliant garden fence tale, Spirited Away. Chihiro needs to get out of herself, to learn responsibility and to take care of other people. So in the magical bathhouse, not only must she hold down a job to get her parents back, but she develops compassion. In contrast, the problem with Wonder Park is it's not really clear what June's emotional crisis is. Why does she stop playing with her park when her mom gets sick? Because she misses her mom? So what is it that she learns through her time in the magical park? Not to be so sad? That she can express her imagination without her mom? That's a strange takeaway when the emotional climax in the regular world is built around June getting her mom back. Long story short, without a clearly defined emotional crisis, June's magical adventures can't teach her what she needs to progress. And without that development, the movie fails to have penetrating emotional impact. I mean, go see it. There are some nice action sequences, and the animation is good. But then go rewatch Spirited Away. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. They're furry, fat, and hibernate all winter. Not bears, bumblebees, specifically the queens, which emerge from hibernation in the spring to establish new colonies, a bit of a trek away.
We knew that queens end up kilometers from their previous year's natal nest site, but we didn't know anything really about how they get there.
Clint Perry, a cognitive biologist at Queen Mary University of London. To observe that phenomenon in action, he and his team glued antennas to the backs of 20 bumblebee queens, which had been kept under simulated hibernation conditions. The researchers then tracked the insects with radar as they emerged from small dens in the dirt, and they found that bumblebees take wing for only 10 to 20 seconds before landing for much longer layovers.
We were all surprised that the bees spent so much time resting on the ground and that they seemed to sleep for much of this time even. I personally found it amusing and cute that they so often positioned their bodies so that their head was under a leaf or under grass while their butt was still sticking out into the open.
Observations of wild bees confirmed they do this too, and that it wasn't just the transponders affecting the bees' behavior. As for how the queens wind up kilometers away from the previous year's nest site, computer modeling suggests even these short random bursts of flight would do the job. The results are in the journal Scientific Reports. The findings suggest some queen-friendly conservation ideas, too.
It would likely help queen bumblebees' survival if we establish pollinator-friendly corridors between conserved landscape patches. It means planting more pollinator-friendly flowers and pollinator-friendly trees and flowers year-round.
The queens also take shelter in long grass and leaf litter, suggesting an intervention that's a little closer to home, if you can resist raking, that is. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Aren't poll taxes illegal, forbidden, unconstitutional? Well, we thought so.
My name is Ramsey Clark, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The 24th Amendment to the United States Constitution, ratified in 1964, made poll taxes unconstitutional in federal elections. And a Supreme Court decision in 1966 ruled that poll taxes were unconstitutional in state elections as well, a violation of the equal protection guarantee of the 14th Amendment. So, between the Supreme Court's decision and the constitutional amendment, we all thought that the poll tax was dead. But now in Florida, it's returning. Last November, Florida voters approved a ballot measure to restore voting rights to 1.4 million persons with felony convictions who would serve their sentences. But now, Florida is on the verge of requiring persons who want to have their voting rights restored to have to pay any and all court costs and fines before they can get on the voter rolls. Really, you owe $25 in court costs, and the penalty is you can't vote in Florida. That's the proposal to discriminate against poor people and disproportionately people of color. A 2019 version of the poll tax.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. It was the first day of the strike at the Lorry Textile Mill in Gastonia, North Carolina. Textile mill workers in the South were paid significantly less than workers in the North. Child labor restrictions were not strictly enforced in many Southern mills. To make matters worse, in 1927, the company hired engineering experts to study the Lorry Mill. Their goal was to figure out how to drive down labor costs even further. The plan they concocted was called stretching out. Under the stretching out system, each worker had to keep an eye on more spindles for the same pay. Pleased with the idea, the company laid off a third of its workforce. When the National Textile Workers Union came to town for an organizing drive, the workers were more than ready to strike. Vera Buck-Weisbord, one of the union organizers, recalled, "The women talked about the stretch out, how you needed roller skates to run from one side to another. You couldn't cover so many. They talked about how their children would get sick, and it was so hard to give them any care." The strike soon became violent. The mill bosses evicted strikers from their company housing. Masked men destroyed the union headquarters. A gunfight broke out at a strike camp, wounding several. A police officer was killed. Dozens of strikers were arrested, but no one was convicted. After the shooting of the officer, violence against the strikers increased. One day, a strike organizer and labor musician, Ella Mae Wiggins, was shot on the way to a rally. She had 5 children. No one was convicted in her case either. Sadly, after her death, the strike was defeated.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on Monday, April 1st, 2019. I'm Mark Boulanger. A few years back, Continental Airlines in the U.S. merged with United, an action which helped the companies but had devastating consequences for workers who lost their jobs because of the merger. Some Japanese workers are still fighting to get their jobs back. Steve Zeltzer of the Labor Video Project interviewed one of the flight attendants involved in the dispute.
Yes, my name is Noriko, and this is a first trial for us. We were terminated 3 years ago just because we belong to a different union. We were hired in Japan, and we belong to a Japanese labor union, and that's the only reason we lost a job. Company cannot give us any reasonable reason why they had to terminate us, because they are making big money every year, and they keep hiring a new flight attendant, and they even raise the salary for whole flight attendant who belong to American union members, unions, yes.
So is it legal for them to discriminate against Japanese workers who are in another union?
No, not at all. This is not legal at all. Of course, anywhere in Japan, in the U.S. as well, I believe, yes.
So why do you think the reason is they discriminated against you?
Because they have an agreement between United and American AFA, American Flight Attendant Association. AFA, yes. They had an agreement that their agreement was the only the American citizen and who belong to American AFA is only allowed to work on the airplane, which means we are not that one. We are not belonging to a AFA.
But they did hire you, United.
They hired us. Actually, we were working for Continental Airlines, and after Continental Micronesia independent, we moved to Continental Micronesia. And after they merged with the United, AFA were chosen to be one union for whole United Airlines.
But the other workers who are working at Continental have merged into the new union.
Everybody working for United right now, yes.
So how many flight attendants have been affected by this? How many?
21 Narita base, ex-Continental Micronesia. And some of them left the company because they're about quitting a job already, and they agree. But we need to work. So at this moment, 4 of us remain to fight this case.
And did they offer any financial incentive to get rid of you, or they just terminate you?
They did, but it was very, 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 very bad. Yes, yes.
So, are other unions in Japan supporting you?
Yes, a lot of union, even union which is not really close to us, but they all mad about United, the way they did get rid of us, and they all standing up together. Actually, we contacted AFA, but Sarah Nelson, but she said through somebody else. But they said that they will wait and see how the judge decide. And company is the one do something to do if they have to do something.
And what union are you in?
We are in Zenro, Japan, Zenkoku Ippan. It's a Japanese labor union. Yes, it's nothing that, not only flight attendant or many company people who work for and they have any problem, they get this support from this union.
And these airline companies are making a lot of money, very profitable, United. Why would they discriminate? They're making so much money.
They are just greedy. They are greedy and to just make their own money and make a good contact with the AFA only. They just discrimination. This is total discrimination.
The new people that they're hiring, are they AFA members?
They are AFA member, yes.
How long did you work for the airline?
I worked for 25 years.
Long time.
Long time, yes. And I'm going to work for more for United Airlines. Yes, I love my job.
You love being a flight attendant? Yeah.
Yes, as a flight attendant. I love my job and I have a passion to work as a flight attendant.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. The British Parliament rejected Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit agreement for a third time on Friday, as lawmakers rebuffed her offer to resign in exchange for backing the deal. Friday's vote was not how May hoped to mark March 29th, the day Britain was originally first supposed to leave the European Union.
I think it should be a matter of profound regret to every member of this House that once again we have been unable to support leaving the European Union in an orderly fashion. The implications of the House's decision are grave.
May warned that if Parliament can't agree on a Brexit plan before April 12th, the UK would need a longer Brexit extension and be forced to hold new European Parliament elections in May. But opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn disagreed, saying Parliament would vote on Monday on alternatives to May's Brexit deal.
There has to be an alternative found. And if the Prime Minister can't accept that, then she must go, not at an indeterminate date in the future, but now.
And the International Red Cross says it will begin a massive aid operation to Venezuela in the coming weeks, targeting 650,000 people. The aid operation was approved by President Nicolas Maduro and opposition leader Juan Guaido, and the Red Cross will be allowed to select where aid should be sent free from political interference. Jeff Ramsey is the Assistant Director for Venezuela at the Washington office on Latin America.
There's no way to spin this as anything other than a huge victory for Venezuela.
Ramsey credits the International Contact Group, comprised of European and Latin American countries, for brokering talks between Venezuela's opposition and government that led to Friday's agreement. And he said the arrangement ends a dangerous phase of escalation led by figures in the Trump administration.
For the last 3 months, these people have been framing the humanitarian emergency as only fixable, only solvable through the use of force. And today proves that that's simply not true.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays, by the way. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. We are expected to go to a high of, well, looks like about 58 to 61 degrees, so upper 50s, low 60s. Winds are light and variable right now out of the southeast, and we have rain as I speak, and we'll continue to have rain all day, all night, all tomorrow, and the next day. And maybe on Wednesday we'll have a little bit less rain and then more rain through the week. It's April showers. bring May flowers. About a third of an inch today, and then another third of an inch tonight, and a little bit less than a quarter inch tomorrow. When the winds will shift out of the south at 5 to 10 miles per hour, so we'll have rain today and tonight, and then showers tomorrow, according to the forecast. Rain will continue, of course, all day, all night, all tomorrow, and maybe a little bit less on Wednesday. Grass pollen is rated finally at low. I have no data on air quality, but the daytime UV index is in the cautionary orange range at 5. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.81 inches. Visibility is down to 3 miles, and relative humidity is at 86%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Indeed, they do. London is registering 55 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 68 and sunny. Rome is 68 and mostly cloudy. Kiev is 49 degrees and sunny. Kabul is 61 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 66 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 43 degrees and merely cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and cloudy with a weather advisory that we are clicking on right now, and it is a beach hazard statement. Sneaker waves. Do not ever turn your back on the ocean, folks. Don't ever. And New York, New York is 39 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny, with your own weather advisory of a small craft advisory on all waterways. So hold on to your hats, button the top button of your coat, stay warm, and that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Arshad Mohammed and Jonathan Landay of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The demise of the only U.S.-Russia arms control pact limiting deployed nuclear weapons would make it harder for each group to gauge the other's intentions, giving both incentives to expand their arsenals, according to a study released today. The expiration of the New START Accord also may undermine faith in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which calls on nuclear states such as the U.S. and Russia to work toward nuclear disarmament, as well as influence China's nuclear posture, historically one of restraint. And as we specify in the article coming up, so much for the restraint now. The study, produced by the CNA Corp nonprofit research group and seen by Reuters, is the most comprehensive public examination to date of the consequences of New START's demise. It argues for extending the 2011 treaty, which expires in February of 2021, but can be extended for 5 years if both sides agree. The Trump administration is deliberating whether to extend the pact, which Trump has reviled as a bad deal, and his national security advisor John Bolton has long opposed, because the black guy did it. You know that. Russia has said it is prepared to extend New START, but wants to discuss what it regards as U.S. violations first. You know, like catching them red-handed, influencing our elections here in the United States and around the world. The State Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the administration's deliberations, mostly because the State Department is woefully understaffed, and that's by design, not by accident. Trump has said Washington will withdraw from other arms pact because how else are you going to be able to hand over the United States to Vlad if you have all of these pesky little arms treaties in the way? The New START treaty required the U.S. and Russia to cut their deployed strategic nuclear warheads to more than 1,550, the lowest level in decades, and limit the delivery systems, land and submarine-based missiles, and nuclear-capable bombers. It also includes extensive transparency measures requiring each side to allow the other to carry out 10 inspections of strategic nuclear bases each year, give 48 hours notice before new missiles covered by the treaty leave their factories, and provide notifications before ballistic missile launches. Wait a second. Trump said he doesn't like to give anybody away the secrets. That's why he keeps telling everybody he's going to shoot people at the border just for being there. Of course, all that would end if the treaty expires. Neither country would have the same degree of confidence in its ability to assess the other's precise warhead level, CNA's Vince Manzo wrote in the study. Worst-case planning is also more likely as a result. Without the data, the U.S. would have to reassign its overworked satellites, possibly devoting more surveillance to Russia and less to China, Iran, and North Korea, exactly as Vlad had planned it. It's a Vlad plan. While it was impossible to predict how China, estimated to have about 280 nuclear warheads, would react to the New START's expiry, the study cites factors that could make Beijing expand its capability. And as we'll see in the next article, you'll see exactly how they're doing that. The study recommends for the U.S. and Russia to mitigate the risk from the treaty's expiration, including voluntarily sticking to its limits and continuing to exchange data. It also recommends Washington propose annual exchanges of nuclear weapons information and dialogue with Beijing.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. China will be able to build 6 to 8 nuclear reactors a year once the approval process gets back to normal in the near future, the chairman of the state-owned China National Nuclear Corporation told Reuters. That should be enough to meet our country's 2030 development plans, he said, on the sidelines of an industry conference. Now, China did not approve any new projects for 3 years, until it gave the nod to 2 new reactor complexes in southeast China earlier this year. Now, of course, no one asked this official what their 2030 development plans are. What are their goals? What do they expect to achieve by building 6 to 8 nuclear reactors a year? What do they need? Nuclear power? Or is it for something else, since the New START treaty is being thrown asunder? Well, we'll keep track of that development as it develops before we get burned to a crisp. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you know that Roots Radio is going to broadcast on. Of course it is. And we've been doing it for 8 years, 24/7, 365. So we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.